What's up, everybody? Welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Show me the meaning!
My name is Jared, and today we're joined by the Show Me the Meaning crew. We got Alec.
Hey.
And Jacob.
Hello, hello!
And today, joining us is a very special guest. Today, we have Michael Tucker from Lessons from the Screenplay. How's it going, Michael?
It's going very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This is I feel like this is long overdue.
Where's the applause sound effect?
Oh, shit. Here we go.
Yeah.
Hey.
That's a whole crowd right there.
Wow.
Yay, Michael
Standing
Tucker.
ovation is what I'm picturing.
So for those of you who haven't watched Lessons from the Screenplay, it's an awesome YouTube channel that talks all about screenwriting, and if you haven't checked it out, please check it out because it is awesome.
And he's got a podcast.
And he's also got a podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
Beyond the Screenplay.
Okay,
Ooh.
cool.
Branding. That's good branding.
Beyond
right
Burger.
there.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out as well.
Beyond the Arby's.
So without further ado, today we're going to be talking about Se7en, the 1995 film directed by David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, and Gwyneth Paltrow. God, what a cast.
It's great.
I mean, yeah.
Too good.
As always, let's go around and get first impressions. What was it like the first time you watched this movie, and what was it like revisiting it? Let's start with our guest, Michael. What do you think?
So I think I first saw this when I was in college, and I had a pretty sheltered high school period where I didn't watch R-rated movies. There was a lot of movies that I'd missed out on, and Se7en was one of them. So my friend was like, "You haven't seen Se7en? You have to see this." So he showed it to me, and I was just blown away by just how amazing it was, and I'd just never seen a movie like that, and it was one of my favorite genres of this crime mystery thing, and it just executed so amazingly, and I just loved it. And revisiting it, I really love it, and it's amazing, and I'm still every time I watch it, I'm just thrilled to be watching it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, awesome.
wow.
And how many times would you say you've seen it?
It's at least 10.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more than that, but at least 10.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Jacob, what do you think about this movie?
The first time I saw it, I don't remember exactly where I saw it or when, but it was early on in that whole movement when I started to fall in love with movies. I was only 9 when the movie came out, so I probably didn't see it until I was 15, 13, but it was around seeing Boogie Nights and seeing Magnolia and seeing the movies, and this was one of those. And especially, I loved The Game, the movie that he followed it up with, Fincher. So I remember I loved the twist, and I liked how dark it was. And I remember that was a different thing than most of the movies I had seen, coming from watching Aladdin to then watching Se7en, where it's super gritty, super grungy. And but then I loved it the first time, and then I saw it again. This is probably my third or fourth time seeing it. Liked it a little bit less, just once you kind of know the reveal. I just didn't find that as exciting. And then this time, honestly, I was a little bit bored. It just felt like maybe I'm not in the moment anymore, or it's just it's like the noir detective story. It's raining all the time. I felt like some of the dialogue was a little long. Still a good movie, well executed. You can totally see the Fincher in it and where he ends up going with it. But overall, I feel like I've got it. I feel like I've got it enough. But yeah, still a good Fincher movie. Definitely a classic. But yeah, I'm kind of not in love with it. I don't think. Not the way I love The Game or Fight Club or Social Network.
Sure.
Which you have the best episode in the world on Social Network, by the way.
Oh,
I love it.
Awesome.
What about you, Alec?
I saw this movie a long time ago. Don't remember. I remember liking it, and I got bad news when I saw it again. I didn't really like it. However, I don't have a reason for disliking it, so I'm hoping with all the enthusiasm probably on this side of the room that you'll convince me that's the greatest movie ever. Because, yeah, I thought it was a little boring. I vaguely remembered the twist, although I think I confused it with...
Unusual Suspects.
Yeah, I was like, isn't it the photographer at the crime scene? Where is he anyway?
Well, it is the photographer at the crime scene.
It's a different photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, I don't know if it's... Yeah. I'll just leave it there. I guess the jury's still a little bit out, but my immediate impressions, I wasn't into it.
Okay, fair enough.
Challenge accepted.
I was obsessed with this movie in high school, man. I saw, like Jacob, I saw it years after it came out in theaters. I only saw it on DVD for the first time, but I think have you ever overdosed on a movie where it's you're so into it and you watch it maybe 5 times in the span of a couple weeks, and
totally.
By that time you're just the last time you watch it, it's just bad, just because you're so familiar.
That was Mandy for me. I saw it so many times, okay.
You start anticipating sound cues, and you're like, okay, this isn't working on me at all because I'm so familiar with it. That happened to me with this movie in high school, so I probably hadn't seen this movie for 15 years until I watched it last night. And I dug it, man. I think this movie's awesome. I think that, a lot of the things that were really, really captivating when it first came out are kind of now just Fincher-isms that we've all come to study and recognize. But I just think the script is really efficient and clever and economic, and there are some things in it that are very familiar tropes, but I think they're executed really well. And, you know, it's Morgan Freeman. Anytime he says anything, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into the movie. Before we do that, let's go into a recap. So days before his retirement, veteran detective Somerset is paired up with rookie detective Mills to investigate a series of homicides motivated by the 7 deadly sins. With 2 victims claimed in the name of gluttony and greed, Somerset finds fingerprints leading to the 3rd victim, sloth. Mills's wife confides in Somerset that she's pregnant and is concerned about having a kid in a city that so closely resembles hell. Using an FBI connection, Somerset gets access to a list of people who have researched the 7 deadly sins in public libraries, leading them to the door of John Doe. Doe tries to shoot them, the detectives pursue, but he gets away. After searching his apartment, they're called to the 4th victim, lust. Mills convinces Somerset to not retire yet, and shortly after they find the 5th victim, Pride, John Doe shows up at the police station and turns himself in. He tells Mills and Somerset that he will take them to the last 2 bodies. Doe takes them to the middle of nowhere where a courier transports a box. Inside is Mills' wife's head. She is the 6th victim because Doe envies Mills. Mills then shoots Doe in the head, becoming the 7th victim, Wrath, thus completing Doe's masterpiece. Mills gets carried off to jail while Somerset proclaims that he will continue with the force and that the world is a shithole, but it's worth fighting for. End of movie.
Clap.
All right, guys, before we go on, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at HelloFresh. So HelloFresh is a meal service. They do all the meal planning, shopping, and prepping so you can focus on a healthier you and a happier family. So it's fresh, pre-measured ingredients, easy to follow 6-step picture recipe cards that are delivered to your door each week with a special insulated box. All meals come together in 30 minutes max. They call for less than 2 pots and pans each and require minimal cleanup. There are 3 plans you guys can choose from: classic, veggie, and family, with the option to switch between when your tastes change. So they sent me over a meal box. It was all great stuff. I got a great chicken dish with fingerling potatoes. There was also another dish with meatballs. All grocery store quality ingredients. Super straightforward directions. Most of it is picture-based. I mean, even me, who was terrible in the kitchen, had a real easy time doing it. So for $80 off your first month of HelloFresh, go to HelloFresh.com/Wisecrack80 and enter the code Wisecrack80 at checkout. Once again, $80 off your first month of HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com/Wisecrack80 and enter the code Wisecrack80. And now back to the show. All right, so since we have Michael here, I want to start just talking about some of the cool script things that happen in this movie. And I think that some of the things, at least to me, that are most impressive about this movie is that there's a really awesome character dynamic between Mills and Somerset. And I think you can basically boil down what's going on in this movie to Mills and his wife's relationship teaches Somerset to elevate himself about the hopelessness and the apathy. And Somerset's experience tries to prepare Mills for the depths of misery that the reality of this city reveals. This is done in a lot of pretty cool, clever ways. So Mills's naivete. So first of all, him and his wife are high school sweethearts. One of my favorite parts of the movie, and then I'll let you guys jump in, but one of my favorite parts of the movie is the train that rumbles Mills's apartment is a great example of Mills being more inexperienced and naive than he thinks he is. And it's just such a great moment when they're both laughing. Or Somerset starts laughing because the whole thing is that Mills thinks he's ready. He thinks that, no, man, I've been around the block a couple times. I was, walking the beat, and you think that I'm super inexperienced, but this is just a very comedic example of the fact that, no, you're not as experienced as you think. But I want to throw it over to Michael. What really speaks to you about this movie?
Well, and I also love the train scene because it's such a great character moment, and I feel like in a story that's so dark and awful and shows just a lot of disturbing things, having moments like that to laugh, I think is a really important part of developing characters and making sure even in a film like this, it's still fun to watch. And that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest triumphs for me, that this film it's about this horrible, awful series of murders, but it's also really about the characters and how they affect each other. And I one of the videos I did for Lessons from the Screenplay was on Se7en and comparing it to True Detective, and sort of how they are both stories about humanity at its absolute worst and like the atrocities that we can commit and inflict on each other, but that ultimately there is like hope. They have like a very small like optimistic message at the end where like after everything that Somerset has been through, you know, at the beginning of the film, he's getting ready to leave. He has apathy. He's done with everything. He's going to leave the city and go away. And he goes through this week of just absolute hell, and through the experiences that he has and his interactions with Mills and how optimistic he is and naive and all these things, like at the very end, they've lost. Like the good guys basically lose 100%. They like don't stop anyone from dying. In fact, they end up with more people dead. But by the end, Somerset says he'll be around. Like he's not retiring. He's not leaving. He's found at least some reason to keep fighting. And so I feel like I think that's what impresses me about this story, is that it can be about this kind of subtle character change that I think pulls us through the plot. So it's about character while it's also about trying to solve this mystery, and how those two things interweave, I think, is really masterfully done.
Absolutely. So I was going to bring up the ending later in the podcast, but since you brought it up, I think there are a couple interesting things about the ending. I mean, first of all, the ending is extremely, I would argue it's pretty extremely bleak. I mean, first of all, John Doe wins. As you said, more people die. But the one thing that I find really interesting is that John Doe's, there's one of my favorite character dynamics, not only between Mills and Somerset, but also Somerset and John Doe, because they're both very educated. Somerset is similarly troubled by a world that is moving further and further away from morality and education. There's a really nice moment where the police captain tells Somerset early on, he's like, don't even start with that big brain of yours. There's this kind of anti-intellectual bent to it. And there's even part later, Somerset, in a sense, the reason why Somerset is so effective in fighting John Doe is because he sees a little bit of himself in him. And when Mills calls John a lunatic, he says, you know, don't do that. Lunatic is dismissive. Don't make that mistake. But interestingly, both what Mills does to Somerset is he wakes him up from apathy, but that's also John Doe's mission, is through his murders, through the spectacle of creating this fire and brimstone medieval sense of moralism through his murders. He also seeks to wake people up from apathy. And perversely, this is what happens to Somerset. So I'm curious as to, what do you think about that? Like, does it make it hard for you to walk away with a positive message at all from this movie?
I mean, it's definitely bleak, like you said. Yeah. I mean, I think that just kind of makes it more interesting to me. Like, I like, you know, antagonists that kind of have a point and have just taken it too far. And I think John Doe is absolutely that, and is sort of, like you're saying, like a dark mirror of Somerset, where if Mills is showing him, you know, one extreme of like naive optimism, then John Doe is like the extreme of Somerset, of like what complete like disillusionment with humanity looks like, to the point where you don't even care about human life and you can do these terrible things. So I think for me that actually kind of enhances it, that it's, you know, it's not like John Doe was wrong. It was just the way he was executing his plan was really bad. Like
killing people?
Yeah, like not the way you want to do it. But I think usually a marker of good storytelling is if all the characters are kind of resonating the theme and have different takes on
that's interesting.
the morality question, and it's just some people are on different extremes than the others. So I don't know. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So at the end, Morgan Freeman says that quote, and I don't remember exactly, but it's essentially like, yeah, humanity's terrible, but I'll still fight for them.
I think the quote is, the world is a fine place and worth fighting for. And then he says, I agree with the second part.
What about the murders makes him believe that?
That the world is worth fighting for? I don't think it's the murders. I think it's Mills. His experience with Mills, his experience with his wife, experiencing that kind of purity.
It's the humanity, yeah. Like he sees, when he meets Gwyneth Paltrow at the diner, he's got this relationship to her that seems to finally give him, because they allude to, like, he has no life outside of work. He has no relationships. and that's the first time he has like the sense of like the perfect husband and wife, the couple, and the whole world and the naivete of their life, and then he sees him turn. This whole time he's sort of preaching about insanity, about how insane, like, the whole car ride to the middle of nowhere. He's yelling at John Doe, saying how he doesn't. Yeah. He's a lunatic and he doesn't believe, he's sort of a crazy person, and yet he gets that same kind of rage. And I think he sees that sort of tale in him, probably in Mills and his wife.
But also, he is kind of another mirror to Somerset, because Somerset says there was a time where I had a girlfriend, we were pregnant, but I told her to basically get an abortion. And so I think he sees in Mills and his wife that this is the life that I could have led. And whereas I had kind of resigned to that being just a distant memory of something that should have never been, now by experiencing this relationship with them, I kind of see it as something worth fighting for, that maybe those thoughts that enter my mind every day, as he says in the movie, of making the opposite decision of raising a family, aren't something that should be roundly dismissed. So I think that that's really what elevates him out of the apathy. I think that the thing with John Doe is probably more of just a kind of a thematic parallel, but I don't think we're meant to believe that the murders are actually what brings him out of the apathy.
Right. Well, it's that his partner kills a guy, I guess, out of cold blood. I mean, understandably, but
Well, he kills a suspect, importantly, yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, he's like, yeah, humans suck, but like they're worth defending.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Because things like the purity of their relationship and the purity of them having a baby is worth fighting for, I think.
And I think there's, that scene in the bar kind of right before the third act where, they've just witnessed the horrible thing that happens in, the place. But yeah, where Mills and Somerset are talking, and I think it is the humanity and seeing what Mills represents, but I think, like you were saying, it's also reawakening that Somerset didn't always have this apathy, and Mills kind of calls him out on it, of like, I don't think you believe the things, I forget what it says.
It's sort of like they're diving into their own philosophies at that point, like their own personal philosophies, and it's something like, he calls them on, like, you've resigned yet you haven't, or
like, I don't think you're quitting because you believe these things. I think you need to believe these things because you're quitting.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it's like he's saying you're lying to yourself, like, and kind of calls him out on that. And so I think that is part of it also. It's kind of reawakening the caring that he used to have.
And on that same note, I never understood the metronome in those times when I was watching it in high school, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I was watching it on my really crappy television that had like the worst sound in the world, because I recently bought a sound bar for my television, and only this time was I able to hear that the reason why he has the metronome is because he's drowning out the noise of all the stuff happening outside, like all of the yelling, all of the violence.
I didn't catch
that.
I got a pretty good sound system, but I couldn't even catch that.
Well, Jacob, sounds like you need to upgrade.
Oh no!
Yeah, I feel like it becomes like a symbol of his apathy.
Exactly.
And then, like, after that bar scene, he takes the metronome and
throws
it
away.
across
Because now he can listen to it again.
I like that.
Yeah.
I did not. Yeah,
You're showing me the meaning, man. I need the
showed me the
soundboard.
meaning.
Oh, you want it? Here,
Yeah, I need the
take it.
soundboard. This is like, we're
No
not
offense,
getting any
Jared,
of the.
but,
Where is it?
Sorry, I can't do that many things at once.
Woo!
Yeah, so he like throws the metronome away. He starts throwing his switchblade at a dartboard. Like, oh man, fuck that! I'm a man of action again,
Yeah.
or at least of idealistic action. All right, guys, before we go on, I want to give another shout out to one of our sponsors over at Twillery. So I've talked about Twillery before. Twillery are performance shirts. They're shirts that breathe and do not sweat. So most performance shirts are all polyester and feel like plastic. Twilleries are cotton with an incredible hand feel. I've worn Twillery, I told you. Whenever Jacob and I go to meetings, I wear the Twillery shirts.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, nice shirt. I'm like, where did you get that from? It's like, Twillery, man.
Yeah. So you can save more when you buy many of them. So you can pay $55 for a shirt's competitor. That would be over $100. So tailor fits mean you're always looking your best. Show Me the Meaning listeners can get $25 off their first order by going to Twillery.com/showme and entering the promo code SHOWME at checkout. Again, for shirts that breathe and make you not sweat and look good, Twillery.com/showme and enter the promo code SHOWME at checkout.
This is Jared walking to those meetings with a Twillery shirt.
Yeah.
And you're a sweaty man.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Alec. So let's talk about, I think, one of the most, one of the things that the movie is so famous for is definitely the aesthetics, and something that Fincher is very well known for is the light browns, the light greens, the desaturated color palette, the grunge, the off-white tans. Even Mills's apartment has no white walls. They're all like either tan with grunge or cast in a green tint. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, but he's so good visually. That's where I love his stuff. I mean, it's just so he's so good with color and design, and like even that opening credit sequence is very Seven in the way, and like Basquiat in the way it's like scratchy and gritty and grungy and delicious. And like every shot is beautiful. Here it's just a lot darker. It's like an earlier version of what we end up seeing in his stuff later. But yeah, it's very Fincher.
I'm interested. As soon as you said True Detective, some dots started connecting, but also there, they're both very pessimistic. They both have a very bleak outlook. They both have essentially end lines that are weirdly optimistic, where he's like, once there was only dark, I'd say the light's winning for anyone who's seen True Detective. But yeah, like aesthetically, I mean, it is different. In this case, like grungy apartments and stuff. But with True Detective, it is like the landscape and like everyone's sort of dwarfed and everything's kind of like muddy and gross. But yeah.
It's like Southern Gothic versus Noir Gothic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're both pretty gross. By the way, did you watch season 3 of True Detective?
I haven't yet.
Oh man, it's pretty good.
Is it?
I recommend it.
Oh, cool.
Did you stop watching after season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I like enjoyed season 2 enough. I think I went into it kind of like I kind of try to forgive creators when it's like they're gonna make a sequel to the most perfect thing ever. Like I give Dark Knight Rises a lot of like forgiveness. It's like you can't make a sequel to The Dark Knight. Like it's not gonna be as good. So I went in with really low expectations and was like fine with season 2. Oh, okay. But wasn't excited to return either. So
yeah.
But it's good to hear that it's good.
What did you get on the aesthetic side? Is there something else that you kind of picked up on? Obviously the production design is awesome. Like these rooms are incredible. Every setting is great, especially like John Doe's apartment, the sloth guy.
Well, the one thing I'll say is that, I mean, there are minor details like the metronome and stuff that I wasn't really able to contextualize when I was watching it for the first time. But even at the beginning of the movie, there are close-ups of the objects in Somerset's apartment, and he's got like a wallet that's like engraved. He's got a really nice chess set. And he's got, of course, there's that switchblade, but everything is like pretty ornate and beautiful. And that's kind of another thing that you see in the world building is that, so there's like the library where...
yeah, I like that scene.
So the library, it's like, that's like one of the few parts in which the books and all of that part is pretty reverently displayed. Whereas like the guards are just playing poker and, just kind of joviantly joking about, the fact that this is a place where there's like, of culture and stuff like that.
It's like Vice contrasted with what, like, I guess the pinnacle of civilization, like Bach is playing in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to attribute all of this as like, oh, I see what Fincher's doing. He's trying to paint the city as hell, but I don't know if there's really any... Other than the fact that it's a shithole, I don't really know how to prove that.
It's raining.
But the raining, like, I mean, in the last circle of hell in the Inferno, like, it is cold, but I couldn't really find any justification in Dante for that it's always raining. I actually did find, though, that apparently it's always raining in the movie for continuity reasons because they had to shoot all of Brad Pitt's scenes in like a week.
Oh,
because he had to go off and
He's so
film.
Popular.
He had to go off and film 12 Monkeys.
Oh, I love that movie.
So apparently it was just raining all week, and then so for the rest of the shoot, they just had to use fake rain to keep it continuous.
It's such a character in that movie too. Like,
I know.
Became one.
Yeah,
It's
it definitely
interesting.
functions on an aesthetic level independent of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that was an interesting piece of trivia.
Just another piece of trivia, not even trivia, but we saw Angelina Jolie yesterday at the Whole Foods, and so like right afterward we're like, wow, and now we're gonna go watch a Brad Pitt movie. But this was also like when I think this is the first time Gwyneth Paltrow and Brad Pitt met, and eventually they became a whole item. And the whole movie was also kind of wrapped up in this. Yeah,
I don't remember that.
Yeah, this was like her first movie. This is before Shakespeare in Love, before Sliding Doors, I think. Even this is like her big welcome to the world.
Yeah. She's really good. I feel like all the main actors are just so amazing.
It's
in this.
incredible cast. We
Yeah.
got the guy from Office Space, one of the Bobs in there, in the helicopter.
Yeah, I can't believe you're like,
Scrubs.
where is he from? I was like, he's from Scrubs. And I was like,
Right.
oh, he's also one of the Bobs.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cinematography is what strikes me is that it's like this horrible, grungy, like these terrible looking things, but it's also so beautiful just because like the way it's shot, and that might just be. I just love how Fincher lights things and how he frames things. And when I was rewatching it, I was really paying attention to, just the framing choices and how he like lets scenes play out. And like, I don't think there's any deeper meaning in any of it, but it's just it's just the good filmmaking
Right.
that
So
Fincher
effective.
does.
There's just so much grit on one end, and there's so much elegance in the style.
Right.
Because like that library scene specifically is like really smooth and a lot of nice, like beautiful dolly shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's noir-y, but it's not. There aren't like harsh shadows. Like it's when things are in light, it's very soft, pretty light. There's just not very much of it. So I don't know. It's a gorgeous film.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, for everyone listening on live on Wisecast, make sure you can subscribe to this podcast. If you like Show Me the Meaning, this is our movie podcast where we all get along or get around and talk about a movie. And you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast,
Stitcher, Spotify,
wherever you get your podcasts, SoundCloud,
and Beyond the Screenplay is also probably on all those things.
Beyond the Screenplay as well.
That it is. You can
Yeah.
subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
Beyond
We
Screenplay.
we don't do all of our podcasts live, so it's very important.
Yeah. So we got, I think we're up to like, how many episodes are we up to now? Like 50?
No,
We've done
like
a lot.
more than that, like almost 70, yeah.
70 episodes. So any movie you might have liked, you might also find on our podcast.
Yeah.
And check it out. Show Me the Meaning.
So another awesome character moment. I love the Spark Notes.
Yeah.
Like
He just, like, tucks it
when
under the
Brad
table.
Pitt's giving
Yeah.
the Spark Notes, and then he like tries to hide them from Somerset when he like moves into his office and stuff.
What was the other line? He
It's
also
so funny.
says something like he gives like a reference, a literary reference. Like, oh, you read that? It's like, yeah, I read that. But what was it? The Dante? Maybe it was Dante actually.
What was it? It's either that or they mention the Merchant of Venice because the greed guy has to actually like carve off a pound of flesh from himself and put it on
Right.
a scale. Yeah, there was
Paradise Lost and all that.
there was definitely
Yeah.
a particular
Oh, maybe
one.
it's Paradise Lost. I don't remember.
There's like one scene where he's in the car with Morgan Freeman, and he's like he makes a literary reference, which obviously he read off of Cliff's Notes, and he's
Right.
like, "Oh, you read it? Yeah, of course."
Yeah, parts. I think like parts or something. Yeah.
Did you feel like Morgan Freeman's job? We're not catching murder. I felt like Morgan Freeman as I was watching this movie. like not that I'm catching a murderer, but I watch a movie and I'm like, oh, they read Paradise Lost. I better go read Paradise Lost and figure out what the fuck they're doing.
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention that when I was a kid, or when I was a kid in high school, when I saw this movie, I immediately wanted to read The Inferno. I immediately wanted to read Divine Comedy and the Canterbury Tales, and of course, in high school, I picked up Inferno. I was like, what the hell is this? I don't understand anything that's going on. Poetry? I thought this would be... Because especially in the library scene, Morgan Freeman is flipping through these books, and there's all these like graphic illustrations
cool drawings.
of
Yeah,
like
like-
cool drawings
like
of
a
like
spider
devils
woman
and
and-
sinners
yeah.
being punished. And I was like, fuck yeah. And then it ended up just being poetry about some guy named Virgil and his, dead girlfriend or something. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I read Paradise Lost in college. Did not really understand any of it. It was one of those books where I read the Wikipedia and I was like, that's what happened?
After
Yeah.
the fact, like, what, really?
Yeah. So another thing, just as the city as hell, is that there are, and this only happens a couple times, but it is a key plot point is that how institutions are adding to the sense of apathy. So of course, in basically a pivotal moment of the movie, John Doe bribes cops to get Mills's address. That's how he's able to kill Gwyneth Paltrow. And then John Doe's lawyer is pretty fucking slimy.
Yeah.
Richard Schiff, who I love from The West Wing,
Oh,
plays the
that's-
lawyer.
yeah.
And he's just so hateable and so
Right.
stoic and so disconnected from the gruesomeness of what he's done.
He's like, "Yep,
Yeah.
this is the deal. Enjoy the package."
He's
My
just-
client, he's a lawyer.
Shrug. Yeah.
Yeah, because he mentions earlier on that cops can be paid off. They get paid a lot of money, and then again, of course, that's how he's able to get his information. And then he's also skirting his own law by using the feds to get the information about who checked out those books.
That is true.
So there's like
Right.
cheating happening, and there's a lot of. I think it's blurring some lines of like who is good and bad. Especially you're seeing that obviously the Brad Pitt character swing so wildly. But yeah, I like it's sort of this town, the Gotham, like everyone's kind of disgusting.
Terrible.
And the
Yeah.
the FBI guy is like specifically gross and like called out for being gross and smelly.
Yeah, exactly.
There's you mentioning like paying off the police to get to Mills reminded me also that in my when I was looking at The Dark Knight, when I was doing my Dark Knight video, I noticed a lot of similarities to Seven. And there's like, I forget all of them now, but there was a lot of like the middle of The Dark Knight pretty closely mirrors Seven, where they think they know where the Joker is and they like get there, but it's all like part of the plan. And then even like the Joker turning himself in is part of the plan, just like John Doe's like
that's interesting
thing. And so I think there was a lot of stuff borrowed and used really well in The Dark Knight from Seven.
And Wirtz and Ramirez, the corrupt cops in The Dark Knight, are like
Right.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I even remember their names.
of course you do. You've seen
Yeah,
that you know every movie's a cue for.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the part about him getting information from the libraries, and watching this movie for the first time in 15 years, there were a couple times where I was just reminded of like, man, if John Doe were trying to do this today, he'd be way more disgusted. Like the idea that, oh my God, the FBI keeps library records? That's so scandalous. Like these days, it's just like, oh yeah, probably.
They know your Google history.
Or even when they see the glutton, the guy who's like the second murder, I think it's the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he even says like, how can somebody let themselves go like that? Now we have My 600-Pound Life on
Yes.
We have
TLC.
mukbang.
We have mukbang. Yeah, exactly. We have mukbang. And yeah, I don't really know what to say. That it's like in some respects, some of those sins like lust, gluttony, sloth, and pride are probably even worse today. But interestingly, I think that this movie was written in response to a time when the crime rate in cities like New York and Los Angeles was way higher than it is today.
Well, it was written, I guess, in the early 90s. I don't know when so cities in America in the like 70s and 80s were super dangerous, and I think 90s is when they started getting safer. Maybe it's still like in the collective consciousness. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember listening, I think in the commentary, the screenwriter talks about him. It was basically based on his experience living in New York in the 80s. And
Right.
like, kind of had
Before
so
Times
much,
Square was cleaned up.
Right. No, yeah. He like specifically like references all of that and just like being disgusted by like the apathy and all that stuff. So it's very much.
If you talk to any New Yorker, they're like, man, things were better in the 80s.
Why?
Because
Are they just hipsters?
No, they're not hipsters. They're just like it's just this very sort of, it's almost like Disneyland for like, especially Times Square, right? It's not like it used to be a place like
Equal parts grit and
like
light.
gritty. You could get like a slice
Real.
of pizza, or like meet a sex worker, or like go to a porn shop, or whatever you wanted to do, right? Get robbed. And now it's been sort of like sanitized to the point of being like Disney World. And so I think, and I have not lived in New York for nowhere close to that, so I've never experienced that. But yeah, there's kind of like a sense of loss of like New York kind of being, overly sterilized. Not a lot of like personality like it used to. I think people are happy that they don't get mugged all the time anymore. But I'm certainly happy that I've never been mugged. But yeah.
It's kind of like a different kind of apathy almost that it's evolved into, of like just such sterility to just like everyone's happy, everything's fine, like just pretend everything's great. And I think
There's an amazing LCD Sound System song called New York, I Love You, and it's about this. And it says, New York,
New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down.
Yeah, and then it goes like, you were filthy but fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's a good tune.
There's one other thing I remembered I wanted to bring up about the ending and just how dismal the ending is. So if we think about what I had said earlier about Mills trying to bring Somerset out of his apathy, but Somerset similarly trying to prepare Mills for the craziness of the city, Mills succeeds, but Somerset fails. And another really great kind of callback moment to the script is, so he can't coach Mills into reining into his emotions. So Mills breaks down John Doe's apartment door, and then that same inability to rein in his emotions comes back when he kills John Doe at the end. So I don't know, if we're like tallying it up here, it seems like there's like 3 dismal things that happen at the ending and 1 positive, just in the fact that Somerset has a sense of optimism that the world is worth fighting for. Now, I remember hearing, although I don't know the details, that there was another ending originally forced onto the script, but then it went back. Do you know what that ending was?
There were like several kind of variations, and I don't remember the exact chronology of how it happened, but I know one of them was that Somerset kills John Doe. Like he sees Mills about to do it, and he steps in and kind of does it for him, and kind of sacrifices himself because he doesn't have anything else to live for at this point. So it's kind of another twist on that of like sacrificing his own self so that the
plan,
optimistic.
Well, and the plan can't really be fulfilled. I guess the wrath is still there, but it's a little different.
But it wouldn't be wrath. It would be self-sacrifice.
Right. Which would be like a positive sort of sacrifice. A positive.
And that would also
turn.
work because it's like it would work more into Somerset saying, "I regret asking my girlfriend at the time to get an abortion, and I want to sacrifice myself so that this vision of a family unit can see fruition."
Although
Do you know if
she's
that was
still dead.
Oh.
She's
right.
dead and the baby's dead.
Duh. Do you know what is his name? Andrew something.
The writer,
Andrew David Walker.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
Did he write that ending, or who wrote the ending that ultimately ended up in the movie?
I think he was the screenwriter for all of them, and I think it was like he was sent back to rewrite it several times. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but there was some test screening that they did where like one of the endings, maybe
People
it was
thought it was
that
too
one.
sad.
Yeah, they were just like too much of a downer, which is weird because I feel like it's almost the more optimistic one if Somerset sacrifices himself.
yeah.
What I had read, and full disclosure, I read this on Wikipedia. I've not fact checked it, but the original ending is what is in there. That they accidentally, and God, I don't remember who it was. But they had accidentally sent the original script that they had already rejected the ending for to some key player who was like,
right.
"Oh, what do you mean no, you can't change this?" And then like Brad Pitt got involved and was like, "No, we're going with the original ending."
Yeah, man.
They wanted to make it a little bit lighter. So yeah, good for those
Because Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman were the A-listers that got to decide what goes.
people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I do remember that now. Yeah. That's pretty cool that Brad Pitt was just like throwing his weight around because he could.
Would it have been David Fincher who saw the original script and was like,
I don't think so. I think he and Brad Pitt were always on the same page with it.
No, I'm saying when the studio sent the script, the wrong script. Because,
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
maybe that's how it played out.
yeah.
I think
Right.
back in those days, Fincher probably didn't have much pull. At least not as much as Brad Pitt, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he'd only made Alien 3 at that point.
Yes.
Which is crazy that this is his second film.
Yeah.
And it being as masterful as it is.
It's Alien
in my
3,
opinion.
then this, then The Game, then Fight Club, then Panic Room. Then we get into Benjamin Button.
Benjamin Button.
He did that? That was
a
him?
long
Yeah.
stretch. So
Wow.
is this, Michael, is this your top Fincher movie?
That's a really, I don't know that I can commit to that.
Oh,
It's
just
hard for
'cause
me
you
to
said it was one of your
choose.
favorites,
Yeah,
so-
I feel like I think maybe the most objectively like perfect Fincher film, in my opinion. Like if I were going to like do a court case and argue that this is like the perfect Fincher film, I think I could argue it the best for this. Maybe Social Network also. I think my favorite is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, really?
Whoa.
Like that just for some reason it just like presses all the right buttons for me and I just love watching it. But I
Yeah.
also can't defend that it's a perfect movie.
But
Wow.
have you seen it's direct to DVD sequel?
No, I refused to watch. I'm so upset that they didn't get to do the
I thought
sequels
it
that
was
they
really
planned
good too,
for.
and I thought it was way better than the made-for-TV version, the Swedish version. Not that that's bad. They're both quite good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, before we move on, want to give another shout out to one of our sponsors over at Mubi. So we talked about Mubi before. Mubi is a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. I almost said grobe. So every day, Mubi premieres a new film, from award-winning masterpieces to festival fresh gems, movies that you've been dying to see or that you've never heard of. There's always something new to discover. So right now in May, they're doing a event for the Cannes Film Festival. They're doing their annual Cannes Takeover. So they're going to be doing a super strong lineup featuring a bunch of Palme d'Or winners all month. So they're going to be doing Amores Perros, which is an awesome movie
good.
because this year's jury president at Cannes is Alejandro González Iñárritu, plus other Cannes heavyweights, Gus Van Sant, Takashi Miike, who I'm obsessed with, and the Dardenne brothers. The movie I want to tell you guys about is Antichrist.
oh, yeah.
Lars von Trier's Antichrist comes out on Mubi tomorrow, which is Tuesday. So if you're listening to this on RSS, chances are it's already up. It is one of the more disturbing movies of all time, but also frighteningly brilliant, and I can't recommend it enough. But if you're if you don't like disturbing movies, I can't quite recommend it. But anyway,
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I saw it before, so everyone knows Helen on the channel.
Yeah.
I met Helen the night after watching Antichrist, and I just was like in a good mood. I felt like going out for drinks after. I was like, woo! So yeah, it put me in the right mood. So it's a great kind of feel-good, shocking movie.
that's how we met Helen. Jacob goes to a bar and says, "Hey, pretty lady, have you seen Antichrist?"
Have you seen Antichrist? She was right, yeah.
Anyway, so free 30-day trial with mubi.com/wisecrack. Again, that's a free 30-day trial. Go to mubi.com/wisecrack.
And we'll see you at the movies.
Of course. All right, so the last thing I want to bring up about this movie is I read a pretty interesting essay called Mortality Plays, Pain, Penance, and Admonition in Se7en and Saw by Deborah Willis and Andrew Wilson in the Journal of Religion and Popular Culture, fall 2011. So she talks about both she and he both talk about Se7en and Saw, and they say these films challenge the values of the modern post-Enlightenment world, recalling an idealized medieval world as an alternative. So central to the two films are a dominant metaphor as sin as a debt that must be repaid for moral balance to be restored. So they go on to say that failure of the light of reason in the secular post-Enlightenment world, the seminal critique of these movies lies in the insistent chastening of it by the medieval. For example, they draw on medieval text and theology in order to point to the perceived shortcomings of the modern world. So I really like this essay because I guess I had never really thought of it like that, because I was struggling to come up with what to say about all the literary references. I mean, literary references are kind of sometimes our bread and butter at Wisecrack, but whether it's Shakespeare, Chaucer, Dante, it's more or less just there, and they explain why the references are relevant. But I found it interesting to say that if you look at it through the lens of our post-Enlightenment era of modernity is so saturated with decadence that the only thing we can think of to actually get people to consider their actions is to basically go back to medieval ways of getting people to reconsider their actions and reconsider that if they're doing is good or bad.
Yeah. You know what's weird about this movie is when he was like, oh, here's why all these people were horrible. I was like, I don't have a problem with almost any, like, the gluttony guy was like, whatever, like, you do you. Like, 20,
Feel your way.
20 years later, get a mukbang channel, you'll have millions of subscribers, you'll be fine. Like, the lust, like, the sex worker, I'm like, I don't give a shit. The lawyer, the criminal defense lawyer, I was like, criminal defense lawyers are an essential part of society. Yeah, I mean, like, sure, they're, like, defending murderers and stuff, but they protect our civil liberties. It's cool, man. And then the only one, I guess, like, the pride is probably a bad man, so to speak.
Wait, pride
was the, like,
she had to choose to disfigure her face or stay alive, or like call a friend, or
whereas I feel like in
face.
Saw they're like really bad people. I haven't seen them in a while.
Well, one of them, I mean, I haven't seen all the Saw movies in a while, but one of them is just a woman who's a drug addict.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to murder. I want them.
Well, I'm talking about in Saw.
Well, in both of them, it's like, oh, you're a drug. So like Sloth, like I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, I want to send you to rehabilitation.
Yeah, I think that this argument makes a lot more sense when it's in the context of New York in the 80s, where it was actual physical violent crime that was rampant.
Yeah, you're getting like, you're getting mugged by someone for drug money. There are like, prostitutions everywhere. I don't think there's like gluttons everywhere necessarily, but okay.
Yeah.
Even like, I think at the time, if you're thinking about New York in the 80s, you have this like very like, because cities were so dangerous, you have this very sort of law and order mentality starting to arise, where you have this backlash to lawyers where like all of a sudden like lawyers are the enemy. They're the ones who are defending the person who just robbed you or whatever. Where I don't know, maybe this is just like the world I live in, where I don't feel like some people still think that way, but I feel like I don't hear as many lawyer jokes anymore. Maybe because I'm around some lawyers sometimes.
But do you think there's supposed to be some form of like satisfaction out of seeing these people taken care of? Like, is it the idea that in 95 there would have been more pleasure in like, hey, these guys have been taken care of because they really are sinners, or they really are the disgusting scum of the world? I don't think so, right? Like, we're supposed to sort of look at them as victims. Right. I mean,
Well,
we're not moralizing them the way the traditional classical texts are or would.
We don't really get to know any of them.
No.
We only see their dead bodies. It would be very interesting if we had gotten to know them, if they were characterized.
Well, we
even
do
the
get to
smallest
see
of-
Mills, right? Like we get to see Mills and his story and his reason for the crime,
Right.
his reason for the wrath, and perhaps if there's the reason for the sex work, or if there's a reason for the gluttony or whatever, all of a sudden has a sense of redemption the same way that Morgan Freeman is sort of like, oh, I now see the human side of this crime, the human side of this
So that could be
condemnation.
That could be 7-2, where it talks about,
Is that like
it's
Dolby
there's
Digital?
there's a new killer that is doing the same thing that John Doe does, but the movie asks us like whether or not like is the glutton actually a victim of
Something
some
else,
other greater
right.
thing? Is I don't know. That could be interesting.
That's
be
more like
called-
modernist, you know?
8? Would it be called 14?
7x2.
Well, I mean, I wonder if that's, because I was thinking about it also. Like, I don't think we're supposed to be on John Doe's side with it and feel like, oh yeah, they deserved that thing.
Yes.
But I think it is. But I think that is tapping into a real feeling that probably people have and maybe don't want to admit toward these people. And probably that Somerset even had in his own way. And so I think there is kind of something interesting seeing it enacted in such an extreme way that like probably makes us as the audience and Somerset as a person like, he's probably had a thought of like, man, I just wish like someone would like give this person justice, or like these bad
Yeah.
thoughts we have.
But
then seeing it is
Because one of the reasons he's so
horrible.
apathetic is because he just realizes that he's an ineffectual bureaucrat, whereas John Doe is sitting there not only, enacting his own perverse form of justice, but making a spectacle out of it that really makes an impression on people and perhaps, I don't want to say this may sound horrible, but makes a difference in some way.
Well, he's got his code. He's like Dexter. He's got his code, and he's hoping this is the most effective way of communicating his idea.
But do you think it would have been more powerful if the crime, like in other words, like if one of these people was like a pedophile, we could all be like, oh, like in other words, or
he does
like
mention that.
I think
to
one of them
that-
is a pedophile.
Oh yeah, he's like,
about
oh, by the way,
the sloth guy, and I think that if anything, that's the one moment where you're like, oh, maybe this is a pretty bad guy.
right. But I think the like interesting question is like,
which guy was a
The
pedophile?
the sloth.
The one they find in the bed who's like
Oh, it's so
been
disgusting.
experienced like the most physical possible pain a human could possibly experience.
Right. And there is the cop saying you got what you deserved. He says it to his face.
Yeah,
So
right.
like in that feeling of like, is everyone kind of excited that these people are getting their comeuppance? Not excited, but like do they feel like they are getting what they deserved? That's the question. But anyway, yeah, he does mention and a pederast, a suit, or whatever he's saying that in the back of the car.
but it's only like one of the what like if the glutton was like
But he was the only one.
stealing food from starving children, I could be like, yeah, fuck that guy. But like, should he have been murdered like that? Maybe not. I don't know. But
Well, I think we can all agree that none of them should
None
have
of,
been
yeah,
murdered. like
none of them
that.
should. Yeah. How did the sloth guy get killed exactly? He just was sort of tied down and sort of.
I think he's actually not even technically dead.
No.
Last
Well, but he does say he's not going to survive. Like the guy's like the doctor who is
He's hanging
also
on.
the Howard Stern dad in Howard Stern's Private Parts. That actor. But
I
anyway,
think that's the one actor that I'm like,
bad choice. He was my favorite. But
Well, he's just.
Yeah.
I think he's just tied to the bed for seemingly
Forever.
years, and he's not allowed
Yeah.
to move.
I think it's like a year to the day, and
Oh, right.
like John Doe like keeps him like gives him just enough food so he doesn't die, and like gives him just enough antibiotics so that the sores don't get him. He just like makes him experience the most possible physical pain a human could experience.
and what was the sloth? What did he do? He was a drug addict, or what was he slothful about?
I think that's the one they referenced something about pedophilia with him.
it's after the fact, like in the car. And by the way, you didn't even know he was a pedophile.
Yeah, but what isn't sloth like? You're not doing anything.
Oh, sloth is
Laziness.
laziness. Yeah, so
Laziness.
like me and you, our lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. But what was he
Jared.
slothful? Like, what? Okay, I guess we don't. Do we get to see why he is a sloth?
No.
That's a good question.
well, no,
actually.
I think the implication is
He just stays in bed all day and is a junkie or something.
Well, yeah, like I don't know what like let's just say he's doing heroin. I can imagine you like shoot up and then you just sort of like lay around for a few hours and then shoot up again and do like repeat. People on heroin are known to do that, but yeah. What do you remember? What's that word? And I think it's from Dante, where contra something, where the punishment for the sin is like a reflection of the sin. Is that happening here? I know it's like poetically so.
yeah, it seems like it.
In other words, isn't it like, yeah, like if you're greedy, your greed will come back to punish you in one of the circles of hell. Is this coming back to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the name of the word, but I think you're right.
But I feel like that's not really. I mean, I guess the guy is forced to be slothful in a terrible, terrible way.
There's probably I'm asking the fans on the live chat. I don't know. I don't remember.
But like the glutton is fed
The glutton is
to
very
death.
clear. Yeah.
But yeah, it might not be with all of them.
So last point I want to bring up about this Wills and Wilson article is they talk about how medieval Christianity, public shaming was so essential to their conception of punishment. So they say Se7en and Saw depict killers whose publicly staged violence is intended to force insight that will draw its spectators into new or renewed forms of community. The staged, spectacular public nature of the penitential murders then reflect this. The community is intended to be brought awareness and ultimately instructed and healed by the spectacle of such extremities of suffering. The community must witness the crimes in order to learn their lessons. So yeah, in our just totally nihilistic age, it's time to bring back old fire and brimstone medieval Christianity to get people to see the error of their ways and change. But I agree with you. And in fact, I even think it is weird that one of the people he kills for, I guess, greed is
it's the lawyer.
Is a lawyer who is a criminal defense lawyer, but then
he hires
a
one.
criminal defense lawyer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not everyone can be perfect.
What a hypocritical killer.
Yeah.
He got the best criminal defense lawyer. You could tell by his blasé attitude about everything.
Well, having said that, one of the things that I like a lot about the ending is I think that the way that Somerset kind of defeats Doe is by
having hope.
Well, no, but he calls him a hypocrite for enjoying his work. And he basically says, like, how can you be a martyr if you enjoy your work? You're basically a hypocrite. The logic of what you're doing doesn't even make sense. And you can see John Doe gets a little bit frustrated by that. And that's like, I think that's probably the greatest win for the protagonist that we could say that this movie
the only
has.
victory we could get.
Yeah.
That is a nice moment.
All right.
Gotcha.
I have a fun question for our guests, but before we get to that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Away. Away is carry-on luggage. It's great-looking stuff. They've got, actually, it's not just carry-on. It's all kinds of luggage. They've got 9 colors, 4 sizes, the carry-on, the bigger carry-on, the medium, and the large. They are suitcases made with premium German polycarbonate, unrivaled in strength and impact resistance. They got 4 360-degree spinner wheels that guaranteed a smooth ride. My favorite thing about them is that I actually opened mine. They sent me one. It was really cool. And I opened it up, and they had for you. You don't even have to ask for this. They include power outlet converters for every content.
Yeah, no, it's great. I have an Away piece of luggage. I love it. You can charge that little rechargeable piece. They have like a piece where you can recharge your phone. It's like a battery pack, so you can recharge your phone, your iPad, etc. And then it's got all the adapters in it, and it's a great suitcase, and it weighs nothing. I had a flight to Mexico where you had like a limit of like 10 pounds or something, and I was able to pack and made it through because it weighs like a pound. It's amazing, or 2 pounds.
There's
whatever.
also a battery in the suitcase that you can recharge your phone or your laptop, whatever, while you're doing it. So for $20 off a suitcase, go to awaytravel.com/wisecrack and use the promo code Wisecracks with an S. You got to add that S for the promo code. So once again, $20 off, awaytravel.com/wisecrack, promo code Wisecracks with an S. And now back to the show. So, Michael, as you may or may not be aware, one of the people on your podcast, Trisha, has started writing for us.
Yes.
And she gave me a little bit of dirt on you.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So Trisha tells me that you hate every movie that ever came out in the 80s.
That's an exaggeration. Trisha would say that.
But she specifically said you don't like any John Hughes movies.
It's... I haven't seen that many. I feel like that's probably more the problem is I haven't seen that many 80s movies or John Hughes movies. But in fairness to Trisha, it's because I don't think I'm going to like them, and what I've seen I have a distaste for. I feel like there's just something about the 80s aesthetic and mode of storytelling that drives me crazy. So it's not really a logical thing that I can defend, but I do have problems with 80s movies.
For whatever it's worth, I had the same thing, but it was only until late college that I actually watched The Breakfast Club for the first time, and I was blown away.
Really?
I thought it's
was good,
so
right?
good. It's
yeah,
so good.
I love it too.
Yeah.
I love that movie. And 16 Candles is great, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There's so many good ones. But
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I like that one.
That's 86, right? It's so good.
I think so, yeah. I feel like part of it seems like a lot of people that love 80s movies saw them when they were kids.
Yes.
And so I feel like there's a lot of things that probably work for you when you don't have like
when you're not
this
thinking
weird
too much about
baggage
it.
with it. Yeah.
We watched Tommy Boy again with interns. We had a big intern batch. We had a movie night and watched Tommy Boy. And this is one of my favorite movies.
Is that
and
in
I
the
was
90s?
It's a
Yeah,
I'm just thinking.
nice.
I'm sorry. Just to give you an example, 90s movies. I watched that when I was a kid. It's not. I mean, it's funny, but it's not great. Like the humor does not translate at all. And so, like
No.
that's like the idea of like, oh, watching again with the filter, eek. But Ferris Bueller holds up. Breakfast Club totally
Breakfast
holds
Club
up.
emotionally, I don't think I was laughing
Big Chill is
during
great.
the movie, but I really connected with it and was just amazed at how it was making me feel. Because I also, I grew up at the time when there were all those like 90s teen movies, like all the ones with Freddie Prinze Jr. And so
Right.
I assumed that the ones in the 80s were of the same caliber, but they're actually way better.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably because I think that's probably part of my problem too. It's like I saw all of those Freddie Prinze Jr. movies too, unfortunately. And, didn't help things.
Yeah.
There were good movies and bad movies. What's my dirt? Do you have dirt on me too?
Oh, plenty, but that's
Okay.
a whole podcast I could fill with that.
Yeah, Jacob Dirt Week.
Are there any other pet peeves that you have of movies that you don't like?
Oh wow, that's a very long clap. Sorry.
I don't know. Probably a lot. I feel like Die Hard is probably also to give.
Oh, yeah.
80s
I think I heard about this.
Yeah, I feel like that was one that made Trisha angry, and that makes a lot of people angry. I finally saw Die Hard, and probably it was the hype of it being amazing. But I was just like, it's so, I don't know. There's something about the 80s. It might even just be like the film stock they use. There's just something about it that makes it hard for me to resonate with it.
If I hear one more person make a meme about Die Hard being a Christmas movie, I think I will shoot myself, but
I feel like
I
that's
hear what
been
you're
played
saying.
out.
Yeah. All right, cool, guys. We're going to go into the mailbag. So send us a voicemail at 213-534-8807 or 21-ELF-GUT or ELF-HUT-07. All right, so this first one is from Anonymous. Let's go with Anonymous. He's talking about Children of Men.
Wisecrack. I was listening to your Children of Men podcast, and I thought it was interesting to hear the different things you guys had to say about the world building that Quarren employs and how it informs what we think about how 15 minutes in the future will operate. And it made me remember something that I read from a contemporary, or I guess was contemporary, philosopher Mark Fisher, and how he admired the world that Quarren built and how realistic it was in terms of building or seeing a world just slightly into the future. He uses it as a lens to talk about the capitalist realism, and he thought it was interesting that even in a post-fertile world that people would still go into their shitty jobs as coffee baristas and other things and still cling to these modes of domination even after this apocalyptic scenario had existed. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and wondering if you guys had any thoughts on Fisher's writings on the matter, because he had a lot to say about Quarren's Children of Men. So yeah, love the podcast and hope to hear from you guys.
Mark Fisher's a name I've encountered a lot, but I've never read him.
So
I probably should.
Capitalist Realism is a Zero book.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of our writers, Leo, just got a book published on Zero Books. And I actually only know very surface things, but after he wrote that book, I think he killed himself, Mark Fisher.
Yeah, I know he passed away.
Yeah. But I think, I haven't read it, Anonymous, but it has been something that's looked interesting. But I think the essential thesis of capitalist realism is just the fact that there is this idea that capitalism is the only way that society can function, and that's what he means by realism, is there's a suggestion that any other alternative is just unrealistic, basically.
And in the case of Children of Men, is it even when everything's gonna you can't even imagine of a reality at the end of the world where you're not a barista or or the main character. I don't know anything about Mark Fisher, but as I'm thinking through it, I'm like, oh yeah, the world's about to end, but I'm still going to be, society still needs government bureaucrats, and you're still going to be because what else are you going to do besides take quietus?
Well, yeah, but I'm sure you still got to pay rent somehow.
Yeah.
So the answer to the question is we got to read Mark Fisher, but great email, and I didn't know he talked about Children of Men, but that's super interesting. Yeah. Neither one of you guys have happened to have read that, have you?
I've not. No, I've seen the movie, but
okay.
It's a good movie.
We also
this is two back-to-back really sad downer movies. Can we get
say.
can we do Breakfast Club next week? Jesus.
Sorry. All right, we got another one from Martin for Children of Men.
Hey, Wisecrack, this is Martin from Ecuador.
Martin.
Hello.
I'm calling about Children of Men. I just wanted to add to your conversation that the soundscape of Children of Men is very particularly powerful. You know, besides, you know, the pop songs having meaning and such. One of my favorite pieces actually of soundtrack of all time is the one that's featured here in Children of Men, that's called Fragments of Prayer by John Tavener, which I researched and was actually done with the script rather than with the image. So it was composed that way. And it's a very beautiful piece of music that appears throughout the movie, but it's particularly powerful because it actually jumps in when Thea cries because Julian Moore's character dies. And he just breaks down in that tree. And the lyrics of the piece are actually very beautiful because, you know, this is rather just a personal preference, but I rather have, you know, my film scoring having lyrics having meaning, even though they're more in the classical and instrumental side of things, rather than just be some senseless arias a la Danny Elfman, like
I'm just going to stop him right there because there's a minute and a half left. Thank you for the message, Martine. Are you familiar with the song he's talking about?
No, but I mean, I get his point, which is to your overall point, I love, even if it's in another language or like barely intelligible, I love when you actually go to the source. This happens in Westworld, where you like go to the Debussy's Reveries, which are about dreams, but like just listening to it, you wouldn't necessarily know that, and then you read about the history, you're like, oh wow, like this really fits, and then lyrically it's the same thing. So I'll have to go check that out. That sounds really cool.
Okay, cool. Michael, have you seen Avengers Endgame? We got one. Okay, we got one more about Endgame. So let's see.
Hey guys, this is Noah from Texas.
Hello.
I wanted to comment about some of the questions you guys seem to have about Endgame and about the Soul Stone and how they get it, the fight between Natasha and Hawkeye. So it was my understanding that someone has to give up what they love most. And in that situation, both of them were both fighting to get back. You know, Natasha's trying to get back her family in the Lost Avengers, and Hawkeye's trying to get back his family in his actual family. So what I thought they were going to do is they'd have to give up the Pym particles, which is basically their hope of ever seeing their family again, but even then they could still get it. So really the only way for them to give up the thing that they've already lost is giving up their hope of ever getting it back, which is to kill themselves. So it's not really Natasha sacrifices Hawkeye, gets the stone, or the other way around. It's not about them loving each other, I think, at all. It's more about someone giving up the thing that they love most. So Scarlett Johansson jumping off, giving up her hope of ever seeing everyone again, of getting her past or future back, killing herself, provides the Soul Stone, and Hawkeye just happens to be there to collect it.
All right, there's a whole nother minute. Sorry, guys, try to keep them about a minute long. But yeah, that was something that was a question that came up for us, is like, what exactly are they sacrificing when they get the Soul Stone? What did you think?
I feel like I didn't really even think about it that much. I feel like the mechanics weren't made super clear, but to me it almost felt like it kind of like what he was saying, is that the relationship between the two maybe didn't matter that much. If it's just like somebody's willing to sacrifice their own life, that's probably the thing that they also love the most and is the ultimate sacrifice. So that's kind of how I read it in the moment. I think I wasn't thinking about it too much because I was like meta looking at, wait, are they gonna kill, like, who are they gonna kill, like, because like you're gonna kill Hawkeye obviously, but wait, why are you making, but like you're gonna kill, but what? So I was kind of like paying attention to other things in that moment. But that's kind of how I read it. It was just, it's a personal ultimate sacrifice.
It's funny you attribute the word meta that, because we were talking about Game of Thrones, and it seems like all of the discourse around whether or not you like how Game of Thrones is ending is about what choices they've made, not whether or not they dramatize it well. It's just like, all right, the series can end in either A, B, C, D, or E. They picked B. Fuck them. You know?
That is interesting.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go into the mailbag. Send us a email at movies@wisecrack.co. All right, this one is from Christian, and this is something that we very much deserve. He says, "Dear Wisecrack, a little disappointing y'all didn't know who sang Ruby Tuesday. but that's okay. In any case, the cover is by Franco Battiato."
At least I knew it was a cover. I think if I heard the Rolling Stones, I would be like, that's the
we
Rolling
deserve
Stones.
all of the punishment for not getting that wrong. As for purpose, Ruby Tuesday, as referenced by Keith Richards, is a song about losing the love of your life. At the time, his then girlfriend, which is what is happening to Jasper. That's what makes it poignant. She and he came together in the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, protested, etc., which is the same timing for the release of the song. They were in love pre-injury. He's still in love with her and is losing her unwillingly. Enjoy the work. Keep the good times rolling.
Is that two Rolling Stones fuck-ups in our career
Who
here?
said it was the Beatles?
That
it
was
you?
me.
Yeah.
So we also had a mess up. We did a show called Film Legends on the Film Theorists channel. And we say Keith Richards, the lead guitarist of The Who. So it's like we just have a blind spot for the Stones.
And the guy who wrote that is like a guitarist.
Yeah,
a damn
exactly.
good guitarist.
A damn good guitarist.
And he was pretty much on the ledge.
Yeah,
for
he was like,
a week.
oh my God, I'll never be forgiven.
Yeah. All right, let's just do one more and then we'll wrap it up. So this is from Balazes. I gotta hope I'm not fucking that up. He's written in before, so if I keep screwing up your name, maybe send us a voicemail and tell me how to actually pronounce it. So he says, "Hey Wisecrack, Balazes from Hungary, longtime listener and fan of your guys. Regards in a hashtag wah." So this is Ryan asked, "What's everyone's favorite crying scenes?" He said, "The movies I cried like a baby most at are mostly How to Train Your Dragon movies, all the way from the first one to the third, but I was also touched to the core by the ending of Big Fish."
My brother loved that movie.
That's a good
Another one is A Monster Calls, also Mud with McConaughey. Those are my absolute favorites, but the list more or less concludes with the following: Room, the Brie Larson one, The Glass Castle, and Lion, the Dev Patel one.
Lion was good.
I've seen very few of these movies. I've only seen How to Train Your Dragon 1, I've seen Big Fish, I've seen Mud, but I don't think I've seen any of the other ones.
You haven't seen Lion? It was good. It was
No,
a
I haven't
Weinstein movie, so it was like, Oscar material. It's like he knew how to like wrap it up to get you to jerk.
That's a cool prompt of like, what are the movies that make you cry?
Yeah.
Up was another big one. Did that come up
God.
already?
No, I don't think anyone's brought that in.
Yeah, Up was a big one. That was so heartbreaking and beautiful.
Yeah.
How about you? Any movies that make you cry?
So Big Fish, the ending of Big Fish, I will agree with him. I feel like Good Will Hunting is also one.
I
that,
do,
like,
yeah.
It's not your fault.
And I cried even in your video. I think I sent you an email after this. I was like, I watched your video and cried.
That was like the goal. The secret goal was like, can we like make it as emotional?
Oh
as
my
the scene?
God, it was heart-wrenching.
And then Inside Out, like
Oh,
always, like
with Bing Bong?
Bing Bong.
like all of that.
What
Just-
a goofy name.
I like rewatched just that scene like out of context recently, and like
Does it still work?
I like had to keep it
Pixar's
together.
masterful.
For me, the Pixar movie that makes me cry is Toy Story 3.
Yeah, it's also very special.
That was a random quick story. I have a friend whose sister worked at Pixar, and so we got to go see like a preview screening of Toy Story 3 at Pixar with like a bunch of other press people. And like the third act, they hadn't finished the graphics, so it looked terrible, and it was just like you wouldn't think it would have any emotionality, but everyone was just like trying really hard not to show that they were all like crying at this like press screening.
That sounds so
Yeah.
awkward.
So
I don't want to see a movie at a press screening. It's just too. There's just too much going on. Too many other people there. It's too judgy.
Yeah.
They're there to judge.
Sure.
Jared King gets mine.
No. What is it?
Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan.
Oh, sure. But what about Star Trek II, the J.J. Abrams one?
No, fuck that movie.
I didn't like that one. Into Darkness.
Yeah, but isn't that like a recreation?
Oh yeah. So the scene is spoilers, but Spock dies, and he says, "Jim, I have been and always will be your friend," and it's beautiful because he's a Vulcan, doesn't show emotions. And then they reverse it in the second one where it's instead of Spock dying, it's Kirk dying, I think.
Yeah.
And it's fucking stupid, and I hate it.
Wow.
Because
remember
also like
liking it.
10 minutes, so also in the original Star Trek, they spend a whole movie bringing Spock back from the dead. And then this one, like 10 minutes later, I think Kirk is alive again.
Yeah, I don't remember how they did it, but I remember that.
Pym particles.
The thing I remember the most about that movie is like when you finally find out the Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's like, "My name is Khan," and then there's like a 10-second like window of silence to just allow for applause in the theater. But it's like so distracting.
Ugh,
But everyone already knew that. I remember everyone on the internet was like, duh.
Right.
And so I don't think anyone was surprised. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Michael, is there anything you want to plug?
So my podcast, Beyond the Screenplay, that I do with the Lessons from the Screenplay team. It's me and the two writers and the editor. We kind of go through movies that we've talked about on the channel, Lessons from the Screenplay, and do deeper dives into storytelling and talk about not just screenwriting, but lots of other things surrounding each film. And it's been a lot of fun. So check it out.
Definitely check it out.
And the channel, obviously, Lessons from the Screenplay channel is so good.
Thank you.
You made me cry.
You can cry too.
It's hard to do. You too can cry.
All right. Well, me and Jacob are not really on social media. Alec, do you want to plug anything?
I have a Twitter. It's called @Wisecrack Alec. That's all I'll plug.
Yeah. And if you're listening, again, please check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Show Me the Meaning. We'd appreciate it. And leave a review if you like it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. That's it. Next week, we're going to do John Wick 3. Hell yeah.
Ooh. With Woody on the table.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Special guest,
microphone.
my dog Woody. All right. See you guys next time.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Adios. From Hollywood, California.